The night was darker than death itself, and the air sliced through my skin like broken glass. I remember the flames rising behind me, my tribe's screams fading into the endless night as the beasts tore through everything we built. My mother's voice was the last sound I heard before silence swallowed the world. I was not supposed to live, yet something inside refused to die. I crawled through ashes, through blood, through fear, until I saw the monsters feast under the red sky. That night I swore revenge. I was no longer the hunted. I would become the storm they feared. Every drop of blood on the ground became my reason to fight. The earth would remember my name, not as prey, but as the one who rose from fire. They took my home, my people, my peace. Now I would take their world. My name is Kael, the last son of the forgotten tribe. I was born in a world before time, where the sun burned like fire and the nights froze the soul. There were no cities, no walls, no mercy, only the endless roar of nature and the silent fear of death waiting in the dark. The ground trembled under the steps of beasts older than memory, and the sky bled every evening as if mourning those who didn't survive. I walked barefoot on stones sharp enough to tear flesh, yet pain became my teacher. Hunger, my companion. The world gave nothing freely. It demanded everything. I learned that peace was an illusion, kindness a weakness. I was shaped by chaos, molded by loss, and driven by revenge. In that cruel silence of the ancient earth, I made a promise to myself. I would not just survive, I would conquer the wild that tried to end me. The nights grew longer after that promise, and the cold began to sink into my bones like a curse. Every breath felt heavy, every step slower, but I couldn't stop because stopping meant dying. The ground was cracked, dry, and empty of life. I could smell death in the air, the kind that lingers when hope has already gone. My stomach twisted inside me, growling louder than the beasts that hunted nearby. Hunger wasn't just pain anymore. It was madness whispering in my ear, telling me to give up, to lie down and fade away. But I refused. I remembered the flames that took my tribe, and that memory burned inside me stronger than any hunger. I began to wander through the endless wasteland, searching for something to kill, something to eat, something that would keep me breathing for one more night. The moon was my only witness as I tracked the shadows, crawling through the mud, smelling the ground, listening for movement. I saw the first prey after days of starving, a wild creature with eyes like fire and claws sharper than my own fear. My heart pounded so hard I thought the beast could hear it, but I couldn't hesitate. I picked up a stone, rough and heavy, feeling its weight as if it were my last chance at life. When the creature lunged, I struck. The sound of bone meeting stone echoed through the night, a brutal reminder that survival demanded violence. Blood touched my hands, warm and real. I didn't think. I just ate, tearing into the meat with desperation. It wasn't victory, it was survival, raw and merciless. The hunger eased, but something darker awoke inside me, the understanding that life only belonged to those willing to fight for it. That night, as the wind howled across the valley, I realized that the earth did not care who lived or died. It watched in silence as the strong devoured the weak. I built a small circle of stones and tried to remember what my father once said about the gift of flame, the light that could turn night into safety. I rubbed sticks together until my hands bled, cursing the darkness, screaming into the cold. Then a spark, tiny, fragile, alive. The first fire I ever made was no bigger than my palm, but when it flickered, it felt like the world had changed. I fed it dry leaves, whispered to it like a lost friend, and watched it grow into something wild and beautiful. The warmth wrapped around me, chasing away the chill, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I realized then that fire was more than heat. It was defiance, the power to stand against nature itself. The beasts came near, their glowing eyes watching from the shadows, but they didn't cross the circle of light. They feared it. I smiled through cracked lips, tasting blood and smoke, knowing I had found something greater than food, control. I lifted a burning stick and saw its reflection in my eyes. I was no longer prey. The flame became my weapon, my shield, my symbol of vengeance. Every night after that, I carried it with me, lighting the path through forests where monsters waited, through storms that tried to drown me. The fire taught me that survival was not about strength but will. I could feel my mind changing, sharper, faster. I learned to cook, to hunt better, to scare away what once hunted me. The more I learned, the less human I felt. I was becoming something else, something carved out of pain and purpose. The stars watched from above, silent witnesses to my rebirth. I didn't pray anymore. I didn't ask for mercy. I took what I needed. I became the shadow that other shadows feared. And yet, deep inside, a part of me still remembered the screams, the faces, the loss that started it all. The fire gave me life, but it also reminded me of everything I'd lost. Sometimes, when the flames flickered low, I would see their faces dancing inside it, calling my name, reminding me why I couldn't stop. Each night was a battle, not just with hunger, but with the ghosts of my past. And with every sunrise, I rose stronger, hungrier, more determined to make the beasts that destroyed my tribe feel what I once felt. They thought they ended us, but in truth, they created something far worse. A survivor with nothing left to lose and a fire that would never die. The fire kept me alive, but it also drew others toward its light, faces once lost in the wilderness now stepping from the darkness, weak and starving just as I once was. At first I kept my distance, watching them from behind the flame's edge, uncertain if I could trust anyone again. But something inside me softened when I saw the same hunger and fear that once lived in my own eyes. Slowly we gathered, a handful of survivors bound not by blood but by the will to live. We shared food, stories, scars, and silence. They called me their leader because I had the fire, but in truth, I was still the same soul haunted by revenge. Together we hunted the beasts, built shelters from bone and stone, and marked our land with ashes to warn intruders. For a while, peace existed, fragile but real. We laughed, we sang under the stars, we felt almost human again. But peace never lasts where power grows. It began with whispers, small arguments over food, tools, and territory. Then came jealousy. The fire that once united us became a weapon of control. Some wanted to claim it as theirs, to rule the tribe through fear. I tried to stop them, but ambition had already poisoned their hearts. One night I woke to the sound of footsteps, my own people surrounding me, their faces hard and cold. They said I had too much power, that I had become the very thing I once fought against. I looked at them and saw not enemies but broken souls twisted by hunger and fear. Still, they attacked. The air filled with screams and smoke, the same chaos I once fled as a child. I fought back, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The fire roared between us, sparks flying like the ghosts of old wars, and I realized that beasts were not the only threat in this world. Humanity itself carried a darkness far deeper. When dawn came, the ground was red, the tribe torn apart by greed. Those who survived fled into the forests, leaving behind ashes and betrayal. I stood among the ruins of what we built and felt a strange emptiness, colder than death. I had tried to rebuild a world from fire, but even that light could not cleanse the shadows within men's hearts. The beasts had teeth and claws, but humans had something worse, desire. They could kill not just for survival, but for power, for pride, for the thrill of control. I buried the fallen, though some didn't deserve it, and as I watched the smoke rise, I made a new vow. If unity was impossible, if trust was only a dream, then I would walk alone once more. Yet deep inside, I couldn't silence the voice that asked if maybe I was to blame, if my thirst for revenge had cursed everything I touched. As I wandered away from the ruins, the forest seemed quieter, as if the earth itself was mourning. Days turned to weeks, and I walked without direction, surviving on instinct and memory. Sometimes I heard footsteps behind me, shadows of those I lost, or perhaps the ones still hunting me. I no longer knew who was friend or foe. Each night I lit a small flame, not for warmth, but as a reminder of what fire truly meant. Creation and destruction bound together. The same light that saved me had burned everything I loved. I began to understand that survival wasn't just about fighting the outside world. It was about fighting what lived inside. The hunger for more, the need to rule, the fear of losing control. Those who once called me brother had turned against me, but I didn't hate them. I pitied them, because I saw myself in their eyes. We were all victims of the same curse, the desire to rise above others, even if it meant tearing everything apart. As I crossed rivers and climbed cliffs, the wind carried whispers of other tribes forming beyond the hills, people learning to hunt, to build, to conquer. The world was changing again, and I could feel it. Mankind was evolving, but not toward peace. We were learning how to destroy each other better. The beasts of the wild were no longer our greatest threat. We had become our own predators. And as I stood on the edge of a mountain watching the sun sink into blood-red clouds, I realized something terrifying. The day would come when the fire I created to protect life would become the weapon that ends it. The wind grew softer as I moved further into the mountains, the days longer and the nights less cruel. But the silence still carried memories I could never bury. My body was leaner now, shaped by struggle, my hands rough from carving tools out of stone, my mind sharper than the blades I made. Each sunrise brought a new lesson, a new way to survive. I studied the animals, their patterns, their strength, their instincts, and slowly I began to think like them, move like them, become part of the wild instead of its victim. I learned which plants could heal wounds and which ones could kill silently. I crafted spears from sharpened bones, traps from twisted vines, and fire that could last through the storm. With every creation, I felt a strange pull inside me, a whisper that told me I was changing, not just living, but becoming something more. The earth around me began to change too. The seasons grew harsher, the rains heavier, and the air colder. Many who roamed these lands vanished into the storms, their cries swallowed by nature's fury. I watched the world test us, tear us apart, and then force us to rise again. It was no longer about who was strongest, but who could adapt, who could learn, who could outthink the chaos. I began to see shapes in the stones, patterns in the stars, meaning in the silence. We were no longer animals running from death. We were thinkers, builders, dreamers. When I met others wandering like me, we did not fight. We shared knowledge, how to make fire faster, how to build shelters that could survive the rain, how to speak without words using signs and gestures. Slowly, communication was born, and with it, understanding. We began to tell stories around the fire. Stories of the past, of beasts, of gods we had never seen but felt within the thunder and wind. Our voices echoed into the night, and for the first time, the darkness didn't feel empty. It felt alive. The fire became our heart, the stories our soul. Every storm tested us, breaking bones and spirits, but every time we rose stronger, faster, wiser. The first winter that came nearly wiped us out. The sky turned gray for moons, and the cold crept into our veins like poison. Food vanished, rivers froze, and the ground hardened. But we refused to die. We huddled together, shared every ember of heat, every scrap of food, and every drop of hope. I led hunts through blizzards, my breath freezing midair, my body numb, but my will unbroken. We learned to chase the herds, to move with them, to live with the rhythm of the earth. When spring finally returned, it felt like a miracle. Life bloomed again, and so did we. I began to teach the young how to carve stones, how to read the wind, how to listen to the silence, because silence always spoke if you were patient enough. We started marking the walls of caves with symbols, drawings of our hunts, our pain, our triumphs. It was the beginning of memory, the proof that we existed, that we mattered. The world was still dangerous, but we no longer feared it the same way. We began to control it, to bend it to our will. We shaped weapons sharper than claws, built homes stronger than dens, and learned to plan for days, for seasons, for generations. Each invention felt like defiance against extinction, each step forward a declaration that we would not vanish. I realized then that evolution was not just about survival. It was about transformation. The fire that once only gave warmth now forged tools. The stones that once sheltered us now became art. Our minds, once filled with fear, now overflowed with ideas. We became creatures of creation. The beasts that once ruled the land began to retreat, not because we were stronger, but because we had learned how to think. Thought became our weapon, imagination our shield. I could feel the power of it, the thrill of shaping the world instead of running from it. But deep down I knew that power always came with danger. The same mind that built could destroy, the same fire that saved could burn everything again. As I looked at the tribe gathered around the fire, faces glowing in the light, I saw what we had become. Humans, no longer bound by nature's rules, but rewriting them. Yet a quiet voice inside me whispered that one day this gift would turn against us, that our hunger for more would return, not as beasts, but as creators who would forget the pain that once made us strong. For now, though, I pushed that thought away and watched the flames dance higher into the night sky, knowing that for the first time, we were not just surviving, we were evolving. becoming something the earth itself could no longer control. The fire still burns inside me, though ages have buried my bones beneath the earth. When I close my eyes, I hear the roars, the storms, the cries of those who rose and fell before me. We carved our names into stone, and time carried them into you. The blood that once froze in the cold now flows through your veins. You are the echo of every struggle, every scream, every breath that refused to stop. We were born in chaos, shaped by hunger, tested by betrayal, and purified by fire. The beast we feared became dust, but our spirit endured. I was the first to stand against the dark, to face the wild, to turn pain into power. And now, as you stand beneath the same endless sky, remember this truth. We did not survive by chance. We survived by choice. Because I refused to die, you learned to live.